Hey, good people, and welcome to another episode of Dear Authors. As you guys know, Dear Authors is a podcast powered by Open Book Publishing, and Open Book Publishing is a traditional publishing company where we help authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs publish their nonfiction book in 180 days. And so today's episode, we are speaking directly to you, talking about how and why speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs, and leaders should write and publish a nonfiction book. And so for today's episode, we have my dear friend, Miss Ethlyn Sawyer of Speak Write Play. Hey, Ethlyn.
Hi, Janae. How are you?
I'm good, lady. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that you have graced the Dear Author space.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, y'all. Ethlyn is a fan favorite of Open Book Publishing. She works with a lot of our clients. She helped, and no, she didn't help. She did edit, publish Like the Pros, the book that she literally pulled out of me, so that I could and we could have this conversation. And so, thank you so much for being here and lending your experience and your expertise, and just coming and hanging out with us.
Of course.
So let's talk books, huh? Let's talk books. And so, there are so many opportunities that I have seen that benefits leaders when it comes to adding a book to their brand, from expanding their brand to establishing their brand. And so, from your perspective, leaders, and when I say leaders, I'm thinking of entrepreneurs, I'm thinking of speakers, I'm thinking of coaches, but I'm also thinking of leaders who are in leadership, rather that's in a mom who's running her house, right? Or an individual who is on the committee for a board, or an individual who works a 9 to 5 and has multiple degrees and have earned the right to have the dollar signs and the letters behind their name, right? So leaders at large, how does it benefit them in the brand development stages or the brand establishment stages to write and publish a book?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the brand development stage. If a leader has been in that space, if they've been doing what they're doing for quite some time, a book can only add value to that. When you oftentimes sometimes we get kind of caught up in the rhyme and rhythm of things, and so we don't always see what's working, if it's working, how it's working, and there's not always a way to kind of gauge that. But if you're able to put your knowledge down on paper and you have this roadmap, let's say, you can put it in the form of a book. And instead of just working with, 10 clients at a time, 30 clients at a time, you now have the ability to work with thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, millions of clients at one time. You can give them a taste of your brand, your style, the way you do things. And that definitely extends your reach. It allows you to capture more leads. And it's just a really good way. A book is a great way to establish your credibility in the industry. Yes, you're good at what you do. You know what you're doing. But once you take that and you put it down on paper, that gives you more room to show that you are an expert in your field. So for those who are established, it's a great way to go. And of course, it creates another stream of revenue, which is nice.
Always nice.
And you can
Always
expand
nice.
from that, right? And for those who are just starting out, in a similar vein, writing a book allows you to put what you know so that people can, it's almost like they're introduced to you, right? If you are starting a brand or you're starting a company or something and no one really knows who you are, write a book, show them this is what sets me apart. This is who I am. And again, you have the opportunity to potentially capture leads, get clients that way. But it's a way of letting people know, hey, I'm here. Look at me.
Absolutely. And what I think too, what another benefit is that is a way for you to coin your genius,
Yes.
right? Because now you're literally able to say, I wrote the book on that.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, your nonfiction book incorporates, if you're a speaker, highlights from your signature speech, if you're
Yes.
coaching, elements of your curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a leader, your strategies, your cheat codes.
Yes.
And now it's packaged into this book that, in addition to be able to help the masses or to connect with people on a more grander scale, you're
Mm-hmm.
also able to legally protect it.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yes.
sure, you could trademark things, you can get a
Mm-hmm.
framework on things, but you can also copyright it because
Yes.
it's in the book, right?
Exactly.
And so I think that there's also some legal support,
Yes.
some IP support, right?
Mm-hmm.
That comes from being able to publish your book, because now you literally can say, I wrote the book on that.
Yeah.
And I love how you mentioned about introducing who you are, because voice matters, individuality matters. And
Mm-hmm.
I hear so many aspiring authors say things like, well, I'm a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an IP lawyer. There's already books on intellectual property. There's already books on corporate law, or there's already
Mm-hmm.
books on whatever the subject matter is, but the perspective hasn't
Yes.
been presented from you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your
Exactly.
experience, your education, all those things kind of shape how you practice law,
Yes.
right? Or shape how you practice accounting. And
Mm-hmm.
so intellectual property is intellectual property, right? But how you approach it, how you support it, your perspective of it has not been discussed.
Yes.
And that is necessary for
Yes.
context and
Mm-hmm.
adding context to conversation. And so I just really employ people to become leaders, rather, to become authors, because I say all the time, when we talk privately, only what is published is permanent.
Yeah.
You know, like, we are still reading To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
We are still reading Lean In. We're still reading The 4 Hour Work Week. Like, we're still reading these books that came out century. We're still reading leadership.
Shakespeare.
Literally, like, we are still reading these books,
Mm-hmm.
and these people that are, God rest their souls, dead and gone.
Oh,
You know, they're dead and gone, but the books are still relevant.
yeah.
They're
Mm-hmm.
still being taught. They're still being reverenced
Yes.
as literature, and as groundbreaking literature at that. Why not your book?
Exactly.
Why
Yeah.
not your book? And so, what about folks? So that's for people, and for uh, leaders who are getting themselves established, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
there's also, speakers and coaches and entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
who are like, I'm already making the 6 and 7 figures. I already have the 10,000, 100,000, even million followers. I already have my robust email list.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they got it,
Mm-hmm.
like, I got skin in the game. I got sweat equity. Do I really need a book? So for our leaders who are established,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do they need a book as well?
Yes, because books open doors.
Mhm.
Books, you may think you're a great speaker, you have tens of thousands of followers on Instagram or what have you. But the value of a book is, like you said, Janae, a book is in perpetuity, right?
Mhm.
So even after you're dead and gone, people could
Mhm.
still read about you. They could still learn about you. Your estate could still be bringing in money to take care of your next generation, right? And also, when you look at some of the biggest names, right? Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Oprah, all of these people, they have millions of followers. Everybody knows their name, but they also have books. And the way
Yeah.
that they remain relevant is through the books. Michelle Obama came out with Becoming, and it was just like this insane
Yes.
movement, this
Yes.
thing, right? But it was the book. We knew Michelle before, right? We
Mhm.
knew her as, President Obama's wife and first lady and all of that. But when she wrote that book, and she told her story,
Yeah.
it was that book that opened up so many doors and so many opportunities. And the reality is, with a book, you can do so much more. It gives you an even greater platform, speaking engagements. You can start organizations, nonprofits. You can be able to partner with some certain people that you never thought were accessible to you because
Never.
of a book.
And you know, going back to the Michelle Obama example, everyone knew Michelle Obama in other nations, other countries, other
Yes.
languages. We knew Michelle Obama, right?
Yes.
But we talked about a person who's established, a person who has name recognition, a person who has already done speaking engagements, a person who already has a gazillion followers. She's established and she doesn't
Yes.
need a book to establish her. But what she did need is a shift in her brand.
Yes.
Right? She was transitioning from being the first lady. She was transitioning from being the first African American first lady. She was transitioning from, in all respect, being in politics, right? And
Yes.
there were things that she was interested in when during the
Presidency.
Obama administration. I couldn't get the word out during the administration that now she can focus on, right? Like,
Yes.
we heard her talk a lot about obesity in children and
Yes.
healthy eating, but now we see her talk about things that's really connected to womanhood, like marriage and relationships and motherhood and telling the truth, right? And her ability to be able to make a shift in her brand that's already very established, already
Yes.
very lucrative. She still wrote a book that helped her navigate what was next, even in her brand. Michelle Obama got a podcast, you know, and
Yes.
so those are now assets in her brand, but
Yes.
she has been able to use her book as like a guiding light, directing people, and to your point, introducing to people who she is in this moment, right?
Yes.
What could she offer in this moment? What is she focused on? Who's her tribe? Who she's trying to be a tribe member with? We learned that from a book.
Yes.
From a book. So I think even though you are established as a speaker or a coach or entrepreneur or a business owner or a leader for a Fortune 500 company, there's always, your brand is never going to necessarily stay the same. There's
Yes.
going to be evolution in your brand as
Yes.
there's evolution in you as an individual. And how are we communicating that to your followers, right? How are we attracting the followers who are necessary and needed for this evolution? How are we communicating this message? And to an extent, your book serves as marketing, right?
Yeah.
It serves as branding for all the various evolutions of and growth and expansion of your brand. So though you are hot shit now, you know, though you have arrived in speaking and coaching and leading, right? You're going to evolve from this,
Yes.
right? You're going to grow and expand, and your book is going to do that. And additionally, when Ethlyn was mentioning, you know, Oprah and Barack and Michelle, there is an eligibility requirement to be a badass.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. Right. There's like like Oprah has a book. Barack has a book. Everybody has a book.
Yes.
If you don't have a book, how do you come to the table? If you can't say I'm a New York bestseller, you have to be able to, when you get to certain levels, you have to have certain things to be on that level and to be respected in your industry with your peers. And one of the things is, I'm a published author. Even if you didn't write the book and you got a ghostwriter, nobody cares.
No one cares.
You need a book.
You know who else just came to mind? Prince Harry, right? Prince Harry had his ghostwriter, and we know he didn't really write that whole book himself.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
look at how many people know his name now. How many more people, how many
mhm,
more opportunities and doors have opened since that book came out? Look at
mhm.
who's talking about his book now,
Yeah,
right?
look
Yeah.
how he has expanded, right, into other cultures and communities of
Yes.
folks that
Mhm.
was not once upon a time interested in him, and certainly not championing behind
Mhm.
him in all the things that he has going on. So yeah, I definitely think a book
It
solidifies
does.
your and gives you credibility to your status. It's a status
Yes.
symbol
It is.
for those who are already established. It's a status symbol like buying the Rolls Royce.
Mhm.
You also have to publish the book. So yeah. So like okay, we understand one of the reasons why leaders and speakers and coaches and entrepreneurs and all these amazing people don't write a book is
Mhm.
because they're busy. They don't
Yes.
have time,
Mhm.
right? I understand because if Etheline didn't beat me on the head, y'all wouldn't have published like the pros, okay? Y'all should see our email threads. And I'm not even, you should see our email threads. And I'm not even, on Oprah status yet. But so I can only imagine, right?
Mhm.
The time that
Yes.
happens and that's necessary to write a book because I always say you can write the only way to write a book is to write a book. You could literally outline your book and organize yourself and write a book in a week. I say that all the time, but I do understand a lot can happen in a week. I
Yes.
understand when you have a lot of responsibilities and you are running your successful business or you're trying
Mhm.
to establish an infrastructure for a successful business.
Mhm.
When you want me to write this book, like you saying it takes an hour a day, I don't got an hour a day. And so like what is a realistic time frame for leaders and coaches to and speakers and entrepreneurs
Mhm.
to plan to write their book?
I think the answer is really depend on which route you want to go, right? If
Mhm.
you want to go the ghostwriter route, 6 months. Just give your ghostwriter, meet with them, give them the content, what you're trying to say, communicate. If you're trying to do it yourself and you have a really busy schedule, I would say give yourself a solid year because life happens. We know that life happens. You can write a book in 30 days. You can write a book in 60 days. You can write a book in 90 days. You can write a book in 2 weeks. But the reality is, if you are using this book to launch your brand or to really enhance your brand, you want to give yourself some time. So I think 6 months is a good amount of time for you to kind of get your bearings together. What I would not recommend is establishing a timeline that's unrealistic and then having to constantly push your deadline back, right? Because the more you do that,
The
um,
shade.
it was not shade. But the more you do that, the more you lose that motivation and that
Mhm.
desire to write. You really want to strike. It's a trite statement. It's a cliche, but you want to strike while the iron is hot, while you have that desire, because there are parts of the process that are not fun. And so if you can at least get the text out of the way, the content out of the way, then that's half the battle right there.
Mhm, mhm. I agree. I think for folks who are busy,
Hmm.
that's why we did like a whole episode about ghostwriting because I'm acknowledging the fact that everybody just doesn't have the time to do it.
Yes.
And we can talk all day about if you really want it, you'll go get it, and all these other things. And people really want it, but it might not be what they can have the capacity for.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
so my recommendation is as a business owner, we do annual planning and projections financially, but we also do that programmatically, right? Like, what
Yes.
does this year look like? Everybody
Mhm.
sets intentions that you need with your
Yes.
team and all those types of things. And my recommendation is to plan to write your book, make room for this, right? It cannot be, unfortunately, the more successful you become, in business as a leader, the less space you have for spontaneity. And
Yes.
that's just the ugly truth, right?
Mhm.
And so I would recommend to plan out, this is going to be the time that I'm writing my book. And so I now have delegated other responsibilities that I have, or I have set to do this at a time where some
Yes.
other things have freed up in my schedule.
Mhm.
Whatever the case may be, I will first tell aspiring authors and leaders to make room, right?
Yes.
To set a realistic time where I could
Yes.
focus, because sometimes you just don't have that. If you just woke
Mhm.
up today and say, "Hey, I'm going to write a book," and you started today with all of the stuff
Mhm.
happening, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's just not setting yourself up for success. And another thing that I would say is one of the secret weapons that leaders have, especially my speakers and coaches who are listening, is flipping your content. Like,
Yes.
you have the book written already. You just have to
Mhm.
structure it into a book. You can literally
Yes.
take your signature speech,
Mhm.
your coaching curriculum, your workbooks that you do, podcasts that you've done,
Mhm.
blogs that you have written, and organize it and structure it in a way for it to be packaged as the book. And if it doesn't complete the package, right, you
Mhm.
have a starting ground,
Yes.
or you have
Mhm.
content that you can flip. Because, like, what we teach all the time is, you need to organize your book. You need to do the pre-planning before you write. Like, we need to take
Yes.
it back to fourth grade where we
Mhm.
plan our writing, okay? Introduction and our 3 paragraphs and our conclusion.
Uh-huh.
Plan your writing, okay? And then once you plan your writing, you can insert content where it goes, right? Once you
Yes.
do your chapter outline for the entire book, develop your book framework, you now can say, like, oh, I talked about that in this podcast. I can pull the transcription, or I wrote a
Mhm.
blog about this, or my signature speech, I go through this, or my coaching
Yes.
curriculum, there's content there, and you can drop and drag into the
Mhm.
book as well. And I think having that plan also is good to leverage technology. Like, you could literally talk your book and
You
it'll
could.
transcribe,
Mhm.
right? If you have a solid outline, the way that we teach it, you can outline your book, insert the material that you already have, and the rest you can talk it out.
Yeah.
Just like this, and there's software and technology
Mhm.
that will transcribe it for you, and then you give it to Ethlyn and let her edit it, right? And she will guide you through. But I personally, as much as I am understanding of, like, capacity, I
Yes.
also know, to Ethlyn's point, that there's so much more to do
Mhm.
than just write the book.
Yes.
And editing takes longer than writing. So if
Mhm.
you just give us something to edit, we can do the
Yes.
rest. And so
Mhm.
I don't want people, like, when we're saying 6 months, we're talking about writing and editing, like, not just writing the book. Like, the whole
Mhm.
writing and editing process.
Yes.
But I definitely think, if you can help it, to not de- de- devote so much time to writing,
Mhm.
especially if you have content, especially if you can leverage technology, because
Mhm.
there's also editing.
Mhm.
I wouldn't overthink writing, because there's also editing. And your editors will explain to you what can be included to enhance the story more. To, if you feel like you don't have enough words, your editor will guide you through that, but you have to give them something
Something to
to
work.
work with,
Yeah.
right? And so I definitely want to encourage those who want to do something faster, that you can,
Mhm.
right? But to not overwhelm yourself and
Yes.
overthink and overanalyze the process, because there is help.
Yes.
Our friends at SWP, can get you edited real good and give you
Mhm.
direction. But you have to at least give us a draft.
Yes.
You have to at least give us a draft, and that's really, really necessary in the writing space.
Mhm.
And so, what do you think about maximizing your brand, right? how do we think about branding and we think
Mhm.
about publishing, right? So
Mhm.
once the leaders have become authors, congratulations. What is your pros and cons around publishing, around traditional publishing and self-publishing? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, if you've amassed a large enough following and you decide you want to write a book, you increase your chances. Your chances increase of becoming traditionally published. Getting an agent, getting one of the big publishing houses to pick you up, or maybe not even a big publishing house. It could be a smaller imprint or an independent publisher who does traditional. But I think that definitely the larger the following, that increases your chances, right? And one of the best things about being traditionally published is your team really handles the work.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to look for your own editor. You don't have to look for your own book designer or formatter or any of that, right? Because there's a team behind you. And the publisher has approached you because they believe that you're going to sell. So they're going to put up the money to take care of those things. They will handle the marketing and things like that. So if you're not really trying to do a whole lot, so to speak, in the book writing process and the marketing process and all of that, then traditionally published is the way to go. Being a traditionally published author is the way to go. Now, there are you have to understand, if you're traditionally published, you may not be getting paid that well until your book actually starts selling, right? So, the publisher may give you some money up front to write the book, but understand that they have to recoup their initial investment before you can start to see any real money from royalties and things like that. And I know people who are traditionally published and they are with the publishers they're with because of the name, but they're not happy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because sometimes in the book publishing world, there are things that are trending. There are topics that are really interesting to readers and things, and to society and what's going on. And so your book may be hot at the one point, and then 6-9 months later,
It's
no one's really
irrelevant.
interested anymore. So your
Mm-hmm.
publisher, who was really interested in you getting that manuscript, going to print and all that stuff, as the trends change, they may lose interest in you. It may not be as eager. You still have your contract. You're good that way. Legally,
Mm-hmm.
you're covered. But they may not be as willing to put marketing dollars behind you, or as much marketing dollars behind you, like they may have originally intended or communicated or what have you. So you have to understand that being traditionally published is great, but it does have some drawbacks. Now, being self-published, there's a misnomer there where people think they have to do everything themselves. No, self-published just means you're not being paid to write your book. Essentially, you are the one who is financing the production of the publication of your book. So you can go to a company, right? You can go and have them handle your marketing, your book cover, all of that stuff. They can have the editor for you, or you can find individuals, independent freelancers or what have you, who are in those respective roles to do those different things for you. One of the things that I love about self-publishing is you own everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
yours. Right.
Yeah.
We talked about IP earlier, and intellectual property. There's so much value in intellectual property, because if you've written that book and you've basically shared these thoughts and ideas with the world, no one can say differently, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
yours. It's yours now. Like no
Yeah.
one can come. People may try to plagiarize and what have you, infringe on your copyright, but it's yours. It is in black and white. People know that this thought is originally from you.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I love about self-publishing is you have more control. If
Yeah.
I want to go, if I, have a chapter in the book that I published that I really don't think I did a great job communicating or writing, I didn't write it well the first time, I can go back and I can update the manuscript and I can re-release, right? And I
Yep.
don't have to jump through as many hoops.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the drawbacks with self-publishing is you have to be so vigilant. You have to do your due diligence because let me tell you, self-publishing has taken the world by storm.
Yes.
Everybody wants to self-publish, everyone wants to say
Mhm.
they're an author. And so there is so much room for people to get scammed, for them to be
Mhm.
conned. There are companies out there that know you don't know a whole lot about the process. They know you don't know that there are certain things that you really don't need them to do,
Yep.
that you can
Yep.
do for yourself with just, a couple minutes of your time.
Mhm.
Um, and you have to be mindful of those. I can't tell you how many stories, Jeanette, I've heard of people getting taken for their money. And, they thought they were getting this great editing package. Come
I
to
know.
find out.
I know because they came to Open Book Publishing, and then I was like, Ethlyn, let me tell you what happened. Could you please work some magic?
Yeah.
I need this back tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah.
um,
Especially with the editing, Janae, because if your book's not written well, it, it,
yeah,
it reflects on you.
and that's my tug of war
Mhm.
with self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And I'm so grateful for the evolution in the publishing space. And now we have like hybrid and independent publishing
Yes.
companies like Open Book
Mhm.
Publishing, because we do traditional publishing, but you still maintain your rights and royalties, right? So it's kind of like
Mhm.
this hybrid situation.
Yes.
It is
Mhm.
a hybrid situation, but at the same time, you still have the perks and the bonuses of working with the traditional publishing company where you didn't have to find your editor, you don't have to
Mhm.
find your book cover, and you're working
Yes.
with publishing professionals who
Yes.
understand best practices for publishing. You're working
Mhm.
with editors who understand. Everybody who comes from Open Book Publishing are leaders who have
Mhm.
speaking program, who have signature speeches or coaching programs, or establishing their brand as a leader. So their
Yes.
book needs to be structured a specific type of
Yes.
way so that they
Mhm.
can leverage it. You're working with individuals who know you as a nonfiction author and also know publishing. And I
Mhm.
think it's one of the pivotal things when it comes to writing and publishing for leaders, because time is of the essence,
Yes.
right? And you don't want to lose that momentum that Ethan was referencing when you're now no longer relevant. And
Mhm.
you also run into what I see now, and I even heard like Donna Wiggins talking about it on social podcasts, is like
Mhm.
we live in a time where there's a lot of coaches and there's a lot of speakers, and everybody doesn't want to coach. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you just want somebody to go do it. Like there's a reason why my Uber Eats bill is ridiculous, because I need you to just cook the
Do it.
food.
Yeah.
Like I
Uh-huh.
just need. I don't want to go to the grocery store. Don't want to cook. I don't have time for that. And I understand how if you feel like you need a ghostwriter, you might feel like I also need somebody who's a credible editor and
Yes.
who's going to design my book cover that's marketable,
Yes.
right? Who's going to make sure all the legal things are put into place, right?
Mhm.
And either I don't know, I don't have time to learn, or I don't want to sit here with you trying to teach it to me. Like I just need it done. Right.
Yes.
And so that's why I appreciate the evolution of publishing that Open
Mhm.
Book Publishing has been able to fit into, where it's this hybrid experience where
Mhm.
you still are traditionally published, but you still have autonomy.
Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I definitely want, aspiring authors to recognize that it's so important when we're talking about developing your brand
Mm.
or transitioning your brand, that you have assets that are polished, and you
Yes.
have assets that are developed with integrity. You have
Yes.
assets that are done right in
Yeah.
all intents purposes. And so you can't be out here calling yourself, the guru on real estate with a trash book
Exactly.
that's not binded
Nope.
properly or has 17 colors and 10 fonts on the cover, and it's not organized
Yes.
properly and then
Mhm.
lit with intentionality with the sequence of the chapters.
Yeah.
You can't, that will damage your
Mhm.
brand. And all the
Exactly.
things we said 20 minutes ago are now a problem, you know? And so I think if I can give any advice, is whatever route you take, whether self-publishing or traditional publishing, make sure that who you are entrusting, even if it's yourself, that is done right.
Yes.
That is done right, because it is going to represent you, right?
Mhm.
Like your brand is
Mhm.
going to be impacted by what you produce.
Yeah.
And so make sure that you produce and publish accordingly.
Yes.
Accordingly. So something else that I just like came up in my mind was we talked about like coaches and speakers with
Yes.
their books and making sure that their books are designed in a way that they could leverage. Is there anything that you would say like you should definitely put this in your book or as best practices for nonfiction books in general so that they can leverage it for coaching and speaking?
You should always have some sort of lead magnet or some
Mhm.
sort of ad page or something where people can get in touch with you. Do not assume that because you have, 50,000, 100,000 followers on Instagram that people know who you are.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Because when you write a book, you are now communicating to an audience that very well may not know you. They may have heard
Mhm.
of you or they may
Mhm.
have some familiarity with your brand. So you definitely want to have a way for them to keep in touch with you.
Yeah.
You want to provide actual information. You want to, yes, like you said earlier, Janae, there are a bunch of realtors who could write books, right? But the perspective that you come from, that you have, that you're telling the story from, is completely different
Mhm.
from another realtor's story. And
Mhm.
so you want to be mindful of that, and you want to make sure you are actually giving people content in your book. I had to edit a manuscript, quick story, and I'm reading this thing, and the entire time I'm thinking, at no point does the author actually give information that I could find useful. You're writing a
Mm.
how to, and this how to doesn't tell me how to. It just tells me that you did it. But you didn't really break it down how you did it. And you keep telling me you're not going to tell me how I did it because you don't want me to follow your blueprint. But that's the point of
What?
it. That's why I paid for the book, right? So it's you want to actually give people information that they're going to find valuable, that is going to help them get to that next place in life. I
Mhm.
understand that you don't want to give away all your secrets, but you have to give them something, because in purchasing your book, they are investing in you.
They are. Yep.
And you
It
want to remember that.
it is a low ticket item in your product suite, right?
Mhm.
And so I definitely think that in your book, you should communicate what is needed to get a transformation.
Yes.
And even the how, to an extent, you may not go into the details of
Yes.
the how and go so far in depth, but you
Mhm.
definitely need to communicate that you know what to do and you know how to do it, so then I can want to enroll into your coaching program or get invested into your ecosystem. So I
Mhm.
definitely think that it's a lead magnet. Like your
Yeah.
book in and of itself is a lead magnet.
Mhm.
So you have to convince me that I should work with you beyond this investment of purchasing your 1997 book.
Yes.
You know, the
Yes.
ugly truth.
Mhm. And then if you're writing a nonfiction book, especially if you're in the business space, I would say the other thing that you want to include is a lot of times people talk about the why, right? And I think that when you are communicating to people, a book is a place for you to get a little bit more personal, right?
Mhm.
In your introduction, maybe, or at some point, you want to take a minute. And it does not have to be a very long excerpt or what have you, but help me learn a little bit more about you. Help me figure out why you're writing this book, why it's relevant to me, what I can benefit, what I can take away from it, how it can benefit me. So I think, really good nonfiction books that I've read, and they haven't gotten too sentimental,
Yeah.
but I've always understood what the value is, what I'm going to take away from this. And that has
Mhm.
helped me to keep reading, because I
Yeah.
wanna know how you got to where you are.
Mhm. People work with people that they like
Yes.
or that they could connect to or that they could
Mhm,
relate to.
mhm,
So one of the things that separate your book from every other real estate book or every other lawyer book or every other accountant book or every other mompreneur book is
mhm.
your voice,
Right.
right? Your perspective, your take, but not just your perspective, but like the way that you show up, personality. Because another element of the vetting process into your coaching program or into conferences that you want to keynote or panels that you want to sit on is making sure that we're compatible, right?
Yes.
That we could work together, that culturally we make
Mhm.
sense,
Yeah.
right? And so you get to separate who the weeds, the people who, this is a good conference and
Mhm.
it will make sense for me to speak there, but it may not actually have your audience. It may not actually have your community
Yes.
because you don't have your values and your missions aren't
Mhm.
aligned, even though it's a real estate conference,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or if you are developing a coaching program and you are talking about how you in your book, you talk about your rags to riches story.
Mhm.
And the person who reads your book isn't interested in your methods because it's based upon how you survived the pandemic during in the real estate market. You just separated who you don't need to work with. And
Mhm.
I think something that authors struggle with is the same thing that coaches and speakers and leaders and entrepreneurs is that we chase the bag, and every bag
Mhm.
isn't a good bag, and everybody is not your audience member. Everybody is not a part of a student in your coaching program. Everybody is
Yes.
not a reader in your book, and you have to
Mhm.
be okay with not being for everybody. And
Yes.
because you're not for everybody, neither is your content, neither are the
Exactly.
assets in your brand. And
Mhm.
that is a vetting process. When you
Yes.
have that level of clarity and you not working with people who you shouldn't work with, who is not assigned to you, there's a
Mhm.
lot of peace and
Yes.
seamless systems that
Yes.
happen because you're not working with people that's against the grain.
Yeah.
Um, so your voice could shift all of that with one book. You did it one time, you ain't got to do it no more. You don't have to do it no more. And something else I think to piggyback on that you said about lead magnets,
Mhm.
a mistake that I made in my very first book was that I had a lead magnet, but I didn't
Mhm.
have an email sequence
Oh.
or a text sequence. So it was like,
Mhm.
here's the hyperlink to join my email list, join
Mhm.
my community. But I had no way of fostering
Yes.
and nurturing
Mhm.
because I didn't have anything set up. So you joined this email sequence and essentially could have very well forgot about me
Yes.
because I wasn't nurturing you. And
Mhm.
so I had an opportunity to have a cold lead become a warm lead and then
Mhm.
nurture them into a hot lead. But I had to
Mhm.
start that all over
Yeah.
again because we grew an email list, but for
Mhm.
what if you're not using it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely have your systems and your sequences together for your
Mhm.
emails and your automations on your social media content, if you're on social, your texting,
Mhm.
communication, all of that, any way that you draw people to become a part of your ecosystem, they need to immediately be
Yes.
getting nurtured, excuse me,
Mhm.
so that you can keep them warm and then transition them to hot instead of having to recook the chicken all over
Yeah.
again. But yeah, that's what I definitely think is necessary when you're developing a nonfiction book to leverage is
Mhm.
you definitely need to have certain things in place.
Yes, you do.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Well, ma'am, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And so tell me, ma'am, tell the masses, tell us who you are, how they can connect with you, what services you provide, why
Okay.
are you so amazing? Here's your shameless plug.
Ah, well, I am Ethlyn Sawyer. I'm the founder of Speak Right Play. We provide English language services. So K to 8 tutoring and English language arts, English classes for those who speak other languages, and for the purposes of today, editing and translation services. So we do developmental, line editing, copy editing, proofreading. We also translate books from English to Spanish, English to French, and English to German. I have a fantastic, amazing team of editors and translators. I mean, they're such great professionals. I always try to, plug them, give them a good plug when I have the opportunity. But that is who we are. If you are an author, you're a leader, a coach, you're looking for an editor who will work with you,
Yes.
then, reach out to us, Speak Write Play on Instagram and Twitter, editing at speakwriteplay.com. Speakwriteplay.com is our website. And if you need to get in touch with me, any of those ways.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this episode of Dear Authors. And as always, of course, I close out with an affirmation. And so my affirmation today is, Dear Authors, write and publish the book. Do what authors do and write and publish a book using publishing professionals who can help you develop a book to help transition your brand, expand your brand, evolve your brand, and do it with a level of expertise so that you can leverage it to continue to expand your brand. All right, good people, that is this episode of Dear Authors. And until next time, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You follow us on social media. You can connect with us on all places at OB Publishing. Follow us, go to our website, at www.obpublishing.com. Visit our YouTube channel and subscribe so that you can see the next episode and all the great content that we have coming to help our authors and our leaders. And make sure you click subscribe when you get there. All right, authors, until next time, be well.